Good evening. I have the great pleasure now to introduce Rob Farnsworth, who will read. Rob is certainly well known to the Bates community as poet, teacher, colleague, tennis partner, and not least, introducer extraordinaire. He is on our maps. We see him heading home down Ware Street, riding his bike across the quad, sitting in his office or behind a seminar table in conversation with students. We regularly get to hear him talk about other poets as he introduces them with extraordinary generosity and an astute sense of how to prepare us for their words. But what do we know about where Rob comes from? There are a number of ways I could answer, but for the sake of the map maker here, I'll try to keep it simple. We start on Narragansett Bay and describe an arc that keeps coming back to oceans. Rob is the author of 3 volumes of poetry, 2 of which have water in the title, and 3 if you consider that clouds are made of water. The first volume is 3 or 4 Hills and a Cloud, followed by Honest Water, both published by Wesleyan Press, and most recently Rumored Islands, published by Harbor Mountain. Rob grew up on the west shore of Bristol Harbor in Narragansett Bay. He describes this as a landmark of personal biography, the place he learned to swim and sail. But it's also a landscape he came to understand as situated in larger histories, including King Philip's War and the slave trade. That body of water, along with his grandmother's nudging, gave birth to an enduring fascination with histories of place, stories and locations we discover in so many of his poems. From the peninsula in Narragansett Bay, we trace eddies out into the world. Months in Trondheim, Norway, on an AFS program during high school. Undergraduate years at Brown in Providence, Rhode Island. Uptown Manhattan and Columbia, where he received his MFA. Before moving on to Ithaca, New York, a brief stint in California, Waterville, and finally Lewiston, Maine, where flocks of lucky undergraduates have had the good fortune to study writing with him. Rob has taught at Bates since 1991. He served for 7 years as poetry editor of the American Scholar. He's been the recipient of an NEA Fellowship in Poetry, a Penn Discovery Citation, and the summer residency at the Robert Frost Place in Franconia, New Hampshire. Lewiston, of course, is not a coastal town, but our river does run from New Hampshire to the Atlantic. There are many reasons to be grateful for where we are, halfway between mountains and ocean. Rob's poems often recall me to that gratitude. Please join me in welcoming our colleague and friend, Rob Farnsworth, whose poetry has, for this evening, been translated into Spanish by Claudia Abelson.